I'm Allison Baker, 32, founder and CEO of TechBridge Solutions, now valued at $99 million. Funny how numbers like that still don't buy respect in my family. My brother Richard flaunts his Ivy League MBA while Dad treats my dropout status like a contagious disease. Last week at Richard's promotion party, he announced to everyone, "My useless sister needs to sell her failing company to me." Dad nodded approvingly. I left without a word. But the next morning, when they came to take over my company, that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever been underestimated. Growing up in Wellesley, an affluent Boston suburb, meant certain expectations. Our colonial-style home with its manicured lawn and prestigious address symbolized everything my parents valued: tradition, appearances, and status. My father, Harold Baker, ran the Northeastern division of a Fortune 500 company, while my mother, Elaine, taught art history at Boston University. They had carefully constructed a life of respectability, and both my brother and I were expected to maintain that legacy. Richard was the blueprint for meeting those expectations. 3 years older than me, he excelled at everything academic from the moment he entered kindergarten. By 3rd grade, he was already being placed in accelerated programs. His report cards were refrigerator fixtures, straight A's term after term, year after year. When he scored a perfect 1600 on his SATs, Dad took the entire extended family out to celebrate at the most expensive restaurant in Boston. "That's my boy," Dad would say, hand clasped firmly on Richard's shoulder. Harvard material. Just like his old man. Meanwhile, I struggled to fit the mold. Traditional subjects like history and literature required a kind of focused attention I couldn't maintain. My mind constantly wandered, connecting ideas in ways teachers didn't appreciate. My report cards featured BS and CS, occasionally dipping into D territory for subjects I particularly disliked. Allison has potential, teachers would write, but lacks focus. I remember one particular parent-teacher conference in 7th grade. Mrs. Reynolds, my math teacher, tried explaining my approach to Dad. Allison actually has a unique way of solving problems. She sees patterns differently. Dad cut her off. "We're not interested in different. We're interested in correct." The divide between Richard and me grew most apparent during our Sunday family dinners. These were formal affairs where we discussed our weekly achievements. Richard would talk about debate tournament victories, academic awards, or his position as editor of the school newspaper. "I've been invited to participate in the state math Olympiad," Richard announced one Sunday when he was 16. "Only 10 students from Massachusetts were selected. That's going on your Harvard application," Dad beamed. When my turn came, I mentioned a coding project I'd been working on. "I built a program that can predict chess moves based on famous games," I said, genuinely excited about what I'd accomplished. "That's nice, dear," Mom said politely. Dad barely looked up from his roast beef. "Is this affecting your literature grade? Mrs. Thompson said you were falling behind." At 12, I discovered coding almost by accident. Our computer science teacher, Mr. Abernathy, noticed me tinkering with HTML during lunch and handed me a book on basic programming. Something clicked. Code made sense to me in a way other subjects never had. There was logic to it, but also creativity and problem-solving that engaged my brain completely. By 15, I taught myself 3 programming languages and built several small applications. My bedroom became a mini tech lab with salvaged computer parts and notebooks filled with ideas. Mom would occasionally peek in, smiling uncertainly at what must have looked like chaos to her artistic eye. "As long as it makes you happy, sweetheart," she'd say. Not quite understanding, but trying to be supportive. The defining moment came during my sophomore year at Massachusetts State University. Richard was already at Harvard Business School by then, following Dad's footsteps perfectly. I was studying computer science, but found the curriculum frustratingly outdated and slow-paced. Then I developed an algorithm for more secure data management, something that solved a real problem companies were facing with emerging cloud technology. My professor was impressed, but suggested I develop it as a thesis project for senior year. This could be marketable in a few years, he said. But I knew the technology landscape would be different by then. My idea needed to happen now. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I dropped out to build my company. When I told my parents over dinner, you'd have thought I announced I was joining a cult. "You're throwing your life away," Dad said, his voice cold with disappointment. "A half-finished degree is worse than no degree at all." Richard, home for the weekend, didn't even try to hide his smirk. "Not everyone is cut out for higher education, Dad. Allie's always been more hands-on." The contempt in his voice when he said hands-on made it sound like a character flaw. Mom tried to mediate. "Harold, perhaps Allison has a plan." "Do you have a plan, dear?" I explained my idea, the market potential, the contacts I'd already made. Dad dismissed it immediately. "A pipe dream. Without a degree, no serious business will touch you or your ideas." Richard nodded sagely, as if his 2 years of business school had made him an expert on innovation. The failure rate for tech startups is over 90%, and that's for experienced entrepreneurs with connections. That night, I packed my things and moved into a tiny apartment in Cambridge. The unspoken understanding was clear. I had disappointed the family and chosen to separate myself from their expectations. Until I came to my senses. I would be the cautionary tale mentioned in hushed tones at family gatherings. "Such a shame about Allison," they'd say. "She had potential." But what they called potential, I saw as limitation. And what they called failure, I recognized as my only path forward. My office was a folding table wedged into the corner of my studio apartment in Cambridge. The rent consumed nearly all of my savings, but I needed to be close to the tech hub and potential clients. My setup was basic: a refurbished laptop, a whiteboard propped against the wall, and endless cups of cheap coffee. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, counting every dollar while watching my bank account dwindle. The first 3 months were brutal. I coded 16 hours a day, refining my data security platform. The core technology addressed a growing problem in enterprise systems: how to maintain security protocols across fragmented cloud infrastructures without sacrificing performance. It wasn't flashy, but it solved a critical pain point for companies transitioning to hybrid systems. I named it TechBridge Solutions because it bridged the gap between legacy systems and new technology. The name also symbolized my personal bridge from academic dropout to tech entrepreneur. Rejection became my constant companion. I crafted a business plan and began approaching venture capital firms with my prototype. The pattern became predictably demoralizing. "Impressive technology, but you're too inexperienced. Come back when you have a co-founder with business experience. Have you considered finishing your degree first?" By the 27th rejection, I was questioning everything. That night, I called Mom in a moment of weakness. Maybe Dad was right, I admitted, fighting back tears. "Allison," she said quietly, "your father understands the traditional path. That doesn't mean it's the only path." It wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement, but it was enough to keep me going one more day. The turning point came at a Boston tech meetup. I gave a 3-minute pitch about my security platform, speaking so quickly I nearly forgot to breathe. Afterward, a woman approached me. "That authentication protocol you mentioned, it's similar to something I worked on at Oracle. I'd like to hear more." Her name was Diana Wright, a security specialist with 15 years of experience who was looking for her next challenge. She had the industry credibility I lacked, and she understood the technical value of what I'd built. After 3 coffee meetings and 1 deep technical review of my code, she agreed to come on board as co-founder and chief security officer. This could fail spectacularly. She warned me with a smile, but at least it'll be interesting. With Diana's industry reputation lending credibility, we secured a meeting with Gregory Hoffman, a retired tech executive who now made angel investments in early-stage startups. He grilled us for 2 hours on everything from our encryption methodology to our 5-year growth strategy. "Your brother's at Wharton, isn't he?" he asked suddenly. News traveled fast in Boston business circles. "Harvard Business School," I corrected, my stomach tightening. "And yet you dropped out." He studied me carefully. "Why should I bet on you instead of him?" I met his gaze directly. "Because I'm solving a problem he doesn't even understand exists." 2 days later, Gregory invested $300,000 for a 15% stake in TechBridge Solutions. It wasn't the millions that some startups launched with, but it was enough to rent a small office space, bring on 2 developers, and give ourselves 6 months to prove the concept. We assembled our initial team carefully. I didn't want traditional corporate types. I wanted innovators who had been overlooked. Marcus Chin, our first hire, had been passed over for promotion at a major tech firm despite creating their most successful security protocol. Layla Johnson had switched careers from education to programming at 35 and couldn't get interviews because companies wanted younger graduates. John Park had the technical skills but struggled with traditional interviews due to his autism. Together, we formed a team of outsiders united by a common purpose. The small office above a Cambridge coffee shop became our second home. We worked through weekends, ordered midnight pizzas, and slept on office couches when necessary. Our families didn't understand what we were building, but we became a family of our own kind. The breakthrough came 4 months in, when a mid-sized financial services company agreed to implement our security solution as a pilot program. Their CTO had been frustrated with existing options and was willing to take a chance on our innovative approach. If it worked, they would sign a 2-year contract worth $450,000. For 6 weeks, we worked around the clock to ensure a flawless implementation. When their system went live with our security protocol seamlessly integrated, their data transfer speeds increased by 40%, while vulnerability points decreased by 60%. The 2-year contract was signed the next day. That first major client gave us the validation we desperately needed. With a proven case study, we secured 3 more clients within 2 months. By the end of our first year, TechBridge Solutions had 11 enterprise clients and nearly $2 million in contracts. I finally felt confident enough to invite my parents to see our office. Mom came alone. "Your father's very busy," she explained, but her eyes said everything her words didn't. As I showed her around our modest space, introducing her to our team of 12 people now, I could see her trying to reconcile this reality with what she had imagined. "You actually built this," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and something that might have been pride. When Richard heard about our early success, he dismissed it during a family dinner I hadn't attended. "Anyone can get lucky with a few small clients," Dad later reported he'd said. "The real test is sustainability and scale." His dismissal stung, but it also fueled me. If first-year success was luck, what would they call our second year? Or our third? As it turned out, they would call it nothing at all, because they simply stopped talking about it. My company's growth became the elephant in the room at family gatherings, acknowledged with tight smiles, but never discussed in detail. My father maintained that Richard's corporate path was the proper foundation for lasting success, while my business remained, in his words, an interesting sideline. But with every new client, every expanded contract, every industry problem we solved, the sideline became increasingly difficult to ignore. By our 3rd year, TechBridge Solutions had outgrown our coffee shop office and moved into a proper space in Cambridge's tech corridor. Our team had expanded to 53 employees across development, security operations, client services, and business development. The once empty reception area now featured awards from industry publications and framed testimonials from major clients. Our breakthrough came when we secured Global Financial Corp as a client. Their CISO had been skeptical initially, They typically only worked with established vendors, but after 3 rounds of security testing, our platform outperformed competitors that had been in business for decades. Your adaptive authentication approach is years ahead of what's currently on the market, he told me after signing a $4.2 million contract. That endorsement opened doors across the financial sector. Within 6 months, we had signed agreements with 4 of the top 10 banks in North America. Our revenue jumped from $8 million to $26 million in a single year. The expansion happened rapidly after that. We opened a small office in London to serve European clients, followed by another in Singapore a year later. Our technology evolved too, moving beyond just security to develop a comprehensive data governance platform that helped companies manage their information across global regulatory frameworks. As the company grew, so did the team. We hit 100 employees, then 200. I insisted on maintaining our culture of innovation and inclusion, implementing policies like flexible schedules and remote work options years before they became industry standards. Our hiring still prioritized talent over traditional credentials, creating opportunities for brilliant people who didn't fit the standard mold. Diana and I were featured in Technology Today magazine under the headline Security's New Guard. The article detailed our unconventional backgrounds and approach to building enterprise software. When the journalist asked about my decision to drop out of college, I gave an honest answer. Education is valuable, but so is recognizing when the traditional path isn't serving your goals. Sometimes innovation happens outside established systems. The magazine arrived at my parents' house as part of Dad's regular subscription. He never mentioned seeing it. By our 5th year, TechBridge's valuation had reached $50 million based on our revenue growth and technology portfolio. 6 months later, after we secured a major government contract, that valuation jumped to $75 million. When a prominent venture capital firm invested in our Series C funding round, we officially hit $99 million. Throughout this period, Richard continued his own carefully plotted ascent at Strathmore Consulting, one of Boston's elite management consulting firms. He made senior consultant after 2 years, then manager, then senior manager. Each promotion was celebrated with family dinners where Dad beamed with pride. Richard's on track to make partner before 40. Dad announced at Christmas dinner during our 4th year of operation. Only 5% of consultants at Strathmore reach that level. Mom glanced at me. Allison's company is doing well too. I saw they were mentioned in the Wall Street Journal last month. Dad nodded without looking up from his plate. Good for her. The pattern became predictable. Any mention of my success would be acknowledged briefly before the conversation returned to Richard's achievements. His corporate victories were dissected and celebrated in detail, while my company's growth was treated as a curious hobby that had inexplicably lasted longer than expected. The dynamic became more strained as TechBridge's profile rose in the business community. At a charity gala in Boston, a prominent CEO approached our family table. "You must be incredibly proud," he said to my parents. "What Allison has built with TechBridge is remarkable. We just implemented their system across our entire operation." Dad smiled tightly. "Yes, she's always been creative." Richard here just closed Strathmore's largest consulting deal of the quarter. The CEO looked confused by the pivot, but politely engaged with Richard about his work. Later that night, Mom found me alone on the venue's terrace. "Your father doesn't understand what you've built," she said quietly. "But I want you to know that I do see it, Allison. I see how extraordinary it is." It was the most direct acknowledgement she'd ever made of the family's dynamic, and I felt tears threatening to form. "Thanks, Mom." As TechBridge approached its 6th anniversary, we received acquisition offers from 3 major tech companies. The highest valued us at $110 million. Diana and our board wanted to consider the offers, but something held me back. We weren't finished growing yet. That same month, Richard was finally promoted to partner at Strathmore. At 41, he'd achieved the goal he'd been working toward since business school. Dad immediately planned an elaborate celebration at the Rosewood Hotel, inviting extended family, Richard's colleagues, and prominent Boston business figures. "It would mean a lot to your brother if you attended," Mom said when she called with the invitation. What remained unspoken was what it would mean to Dad. I agreed to go, partly for Mom and partly because I hoped that maybe, after all this time, my family might finally see me as a successful professional in my own right. The invitation arrived on heavy cream cardstock with gold embossing, celebrating Richard Baker's partnership at Strathmore Consulting. As I ran my fingers over the raised lettering, I couldn't help but wonder if my family would ever celebrate my achievements with the same enthusiasm. What I didn't know then was that Richard's promotion party wouldn't be a celebration at all, at least not for me. Instead, it would become the breaking point in our family's carefully maintained facade, forcing us all to finally confront the truth about success, failure, and what really matters in the end. The Rosewood Hotel ballroom gleamed with understated luxury, crystal chandeliers, elegant floral arrangements, and staff circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I arrived 15 minutes late, having come directly from a board meeting where we discussed our upcoming series defunding round. "Name, please?" The hostess at the check-in table smiled professionally. "Allison Baker. I'm Richard's sister." Her expression flickered with recognition. "Oh, we weren't sure you'd make it, Mr. Baker mentioned you might be too busy with your project." I forced a smile. Never too busy for family. Inside, the room was filled with Boston's business elite in formal attire. I'd opted for a simple black pantsuit, professional but practical. Among the cocktail dresses and designer labels, I felt distinctly underdressed, which was likely the point of Dad's black tie optional notation on the invitation. Dad spotted me immediately, waving me over to where he stood with Richard and several distinguished-looking men. "Gentlemen, my daughter Allison," he introduced, his tone suggesting I was still 16 rather than the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. "Allison. These are Richard's colleagues from Strathmore. Senior partners all." The men nodded politely. One of them tilted his head. "Baker, are you related to TechBridge Solutions?" Before I could answer, Richard interjected smoothly. "Allison dabbles in tech. Small operation, very niche." He turned to me with a practiced smile. "How many employees now, sis? 20? 30? 217 across 3 continents," I replied evenly. "Plus 46 contractors." An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by Dad's forced laugh. "Always the exact numbers with Allison. Now, about that merger Strathmore facilitated last quarter." I drifted away, finding a glass of champagne and a quiet corner. Mom found me there a few minutes later. "You look lovely, dear," she said, though her eyes betrayed concern. "I'm glad you came. It means a lot to your brother." "Does it?" I asked, more sharply than intended, because it seems like my presence is just another opportunity for him to diminish what I do. Mom glanced around nervously. "You know your brother. He's always been competitive. This isn't Little League, Mom. This is my life's work." She squeezed my hand. "Just try to enjoy the evening." For me, the dinner portion began with everyone finding their assigned seats. I discovered I was placed at a table far from the main family table, alongside distant cousins and friends I barely knew. From my peripheral vision, I could see Richard seated between Dad and the managing partner of Strathmore, laughing confidently. After the main course, the speeches began. Strathmore's managing partner praised Richard's exceptional client management and strategic vision. Dad followed with an emotional tribute to Richard's dedication and work ethic, calling him the son every father dreams of having. Then it was Richard's turn. He approached the podium with the easy confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. Family has always been the foundation of my success. My father taught me the value of credentials, persistence, and following the established path to success. He raised his glass toward Dad, who nodded with obvious pride. Not everyone understands the importance of building on solid foundations. Richard continued, his eyes finding mine across the room. Some prefer shortcuts and quick wins. My stomach tightened as I realized where this was heading. Speaking of family, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the ballroom, many of you may not know that my sister Allison runs a small tech startup. She's had some moderate success with her little venture. Little venture. The dismissive phrase hung in the air. In fact, Richard continued, I have an announcement about that. After reviewing TechBridge's position, I've identified significant vulnerabilities in their business model and market approach. They're facing increasing competition from established security firms and lack the infrastructure for sustainable growth. Murmurs spread through the room. I sat frozen, unable to believe what I was hearing. That's why I'm pleased to announce that Strathmore will be facilitating a strategic acquisition of TechBridge Solutions. My team has developed a comprehensive restructuring plan that will integrate their technology into a proper corporate framework while providing my sister with a graceful exit from a business that has, frankly, outgrown her capabilities. Gasps and confused glances spread throughout the room. Diana, who had arrived late and was seated at another table, caught my eye with a look of stunned disbelief. I'll be personally overseeing the transition, Richard declared confidently. It's time my useless sister sells her failing company to me before it collapses entirely. The paperwork is ready, and we'll begin the formal process tomorrow morning. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. I felt a cold wave of humiliation wash over me, followed immediately by white-hot anger. Richard smiled benevolently. Sometimes family needs to step in to fix problems before they become disasters. To my horror, Dad stood up and placed his hand on Richard's shoulder. Your brother's right, Allison. This is for the best. His team can give your little project the legitimacy and structure it needs. My little project? 217 employees. 46 contractors. $99 million valuation. I looked around the room at the sea of sympathetic and curious faces, at Richard's triumphant smile, at Dad's approving nod, at Mom's mortified expression. With deliberate calm, I placed my napkin beside my half-eaten dessert, stood up, and walked out of the ballroom without saying a word. No scene, no confrontation, no tears. Just the steady click of my heels against marble and the burning certainty that something had finally, irrevocably broken. In the silence of my car, I allowed myself exactly 1 minute of rage, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, a scream building in my throat that I refused to release. Then I started the engine and drove home, memories flooding back with each mile, Richard telling me my science fair project was cute while he won first place. Dad explaining that my coding competition trophy wasn't the same as Richard's debate championships, the dismissive glances when I talked about my business at family gatherings. By the time I reached my apartment, the shock had worn off, replaced by something more dangerous, clarity. I kicked off my heels the moment I entered my apartment, the physical release doing little to dispel the trembling rage coursing through me. For 6 years, I had sought approval from people who were constitutionally incapable of giving it. For 6 years, I had measured my extraordinary success against their ordinary expectations. No more. I poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey and called Diana. What the actual hell was that? She answered without preamble. Did you know that was coming? Not a clue, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Have you ever heard anything about Strathmore preparing an acquisition plan for us? Absolutely not. We would have been notified of any due diligence attempts. This is completely fabricated. Diana paused. Allison, this wasn't just inappropriate. It potentially violates securities regulations. Making false statements about a company's financial position could constitute market manipulation. I took a long sip of whiskey. This isn't about regulations, Diana. This is family pathology dressed up in business jargon. Family or not, we need to protect the company. I'm going to call Marcus and have the legal team prepare a cease and desist letter for tomorrow. As Diana spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan Joe, our VP of Business Development. Nathan had previously worked at a firm that partnered with Strathmore. Just heard about your brother's announcement. Call me ASAP. Important info about Strathmore. 20 minutes later, the pieces started coming together. According to Nathan's contacts, Strathmore had lost 3 major clients in the past quarter. 2 financial services companies and a healthcare conglomerate had terminated their contracts, citing dissatisfaction with deliverables. Richard's division specifically. I asked. Bingo. Nathan confirmed. Word is they overpromised on digital transformation capabilities they couldn't actually deliver. They've been scrambling to replace the revenue. The picture became clearer still when our CFO, Thomas, sent over our latest financial reports. TechBridge was projecting $142 million in revenue for the coming year with a healthy profit margin of 22%. Our client retention rate stood at 94%, well above industry average. Far from failing. We were thriving by every possible metric. He needs us to save himself, I realized aloud. His promotion probably comes with expectations to bring in major new business. By midnight, I had assembled an impromptu war room via video conference with our executive team. Marcus had our legal position covered. Diana was preparing security protocols in case of attempted data access. Thomas had compiled a comprehensive financial overview demonstrating our strong market position. They're coming to our headquarters tomorrow morning, I informed the team. Richard texted that they'll be bringing attorneys to initiate the transition process. They expect to walk in and take over. On what possible grounds? Thomas asked incredulously. Family obligation, apparently, I replied. They literally think I'll hand over a $99 million company because my brother and father think it's the right thing to do. What's the plan? Diana asked, the practical question cutting through my lingering disbelief. I took a deep breath. We're going to let them come. We're going to let them sit down. And then we're going to show them exactly what they're dealing with. For the next 2 hours, we crafted a detailed presentation of TechBridge's market position, financial health, and growth trajectory. We compiled client testimonials, industry recognition, and acquisition offers we'd received. Most importantly, we prepared documentation of Strathmore's recent client losses and the specific shortcomings in their digital security offerings. At 3 a.m., I received another text from my brother. Conference room at your office, 9 a.m. Bringing Dad and our legal team. Have your paperwork ready for signing. The sheer arrogance took my breath away. He truly believed I would simply surrender everything I'd built because he deemed it appropriate. I forwarded the message to Marcus, who responded immediately. Got it. Our attorneys will be present. Around 4 a.m., I finally lay down on my couch, too wired to move to the bedroom. As I stared at the ceiling, I realized that tomorrow wasn't just about protecting my company. It was about finally standing up for my own worth in a family that had never truly seen me. The realization brought with it an unexpected calm. For years, I had craved their validation while simultaneously resenting their judgment. I had attended their celebrations while they ignored my milestones. I had accepted their dismissals while building something extraordinary. Tomorrow would end that pattern once and for all. As dawn broke, I showered and dressed with deliberate care, a tailored navy suit, subtle makeup, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Professional, polished, powerful. Not the little sister. Not the dropout. The founder and CEO of a $99 million technology company that was about to teach her family the most expensive lesson of their lives. By 7 a.m., I was at headquarters, reviewing our presentation one final time. By 8 a.m., our executive team had assembled in the conference room, each bringing additional materials to strengthen our position. By 8:30, our attorneys had arrived, documents in hand. At 8:55, our receptionist called up. "Ms. Baker, your brother and father are here with 3 other gentlemen. Please show them to the main conference room," I replied, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I stood at the head of the table, surrounded by my executive team, as Richard walked in with the confidence of someone who already owned the building. Dad followed closely behind, with 3 men in expensive suits trailing them, presumably Strathmore attorneys. Their expressions flickered with surprise when they saw the assembled group waiting for them. "I thought this would be a private family discussion," Richard said, eyeing the executives warily. I smiled. "This isn't a family discussion, Richard. This is a business meeting. And TechBridge Solutions conducts business with its full executive team present." For the first time since I could remember, Richard looked uncertain. It would not be the last time that morning. Richard recovered quickly, straightening his tie as he assessed the conference room. "Quite the reception committee, Allie. Though I'm not sure why you felt the need to bring your entire staff into a straightforward acquisition discussion." "That's Allison," Diana corrected smoothly. "And we're not staff. We're the executive leadership team of TechBridge Solutions." I gestured to the seats across from us. "Please sit down. We've prepared some materials you should review before we begin." Richard and Dad exchanged glances before taking their seats. The 3 attorneys arranged themselves behind them, leather portfolios open and pens poised. "Before your team distributes whatever that is," Richard said, nodding toward the folders in front of us, "I think we should establish the parameters of this transition. Strathmore is prepared to offer a generous package that recognizes the work you've put into this startup." The condescension in his voice was palpable. I smiled. "Actually, Richard, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There will be no transition today." Dad leaned forward. "Allison, be reasonable. Your brother has put together a professional team to help stabilize your operation. This is a lifeline we're offering." A lifeline. I pressed a button on the conference room console, and the large screen behind me illuminated with our company logo. "Let me show you exactly what kind of operation we're running." For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through a comprehensive presentation of TechBridge's business metrics. Our year-over-year growth of 142%. Our client roster including 43 Fortune 500 companies. Our expanding international presence with offices in London, Singapore, and now Berlin. Our proprietary security protocols protected by 26 patents. With each slide, Richard's expression grew more strained. Dad's eyebrows rose incrementally higher. "As you can see," I concluded the first section, "TechBridge Solutions is hardly in need of stabilization. In fact, we're currently entertaining Series D funding that would value the company at approximately $150 million. One of the attorneys whispered something to Richard, who shook his head sharply. "Projections can be manipulated," Richard said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "The technology sector is volatile. You're facing increasing competition from established players." I nodded to Diana, who took over seamlessly. "We anticipated that concern," she said, advancing to the next slide. "This is our competitive analysis across the enterprise security sector. As you can see, our closest competitor achieved a 64% score on the client security benchmark, while TechBridge scored 89%, the highest in the industry for 3 consecutive years." The middle attorney closed his portfolio with a soft snap. Richard shot him a warning glance. "Furthermore," Diana continued, "we've received acquisition offers from 3 major tech companies in the past 6 months. She displayed the logos of 3 industry giants. The highest valued TechBridge at $110 million. We declined all offers as undervaluing our growth potential." Dad cleared his throat. "If these offers are legitimate, why haven't we heard about them?" For the same reason you haven't heard about our inclusion in the Technology Innovators Top 10 or our features in Business Insider and Forbes, I replied evenly. You haven't been interested in hearing about it. Richard attempted to regain control of the meeting. These figures are impressive if accurate, but they don't address the fundamental issue of leadership experience and corporate governance. Strathmore's involvement would provide the structure and guidance needed to navigate enterprise-level growth. Thomas, our CFO, adjusted his glasses. That's an interesting perspective given Strathmore's recent client retention issues. The conference room went silent. Richard's face flushed slightly. I don't know what you're referring to, he said stiffly. Thomas opened a new set of slides. In the past quarter, Strathmore has lost 3 major clients with combined annual billing of approximately $14.2 million. All 3 cited dissatisfaction with digital transformation deliverables. He looked directly at Richard. Specifically, the projects managed by your division. Dad turned to Richard. Confusion evident on his face. Is this accurate? Richard's jaw tightened. Temporary setbacks. Part of doing business at our scale. Interesting, I said. Because according to our industry contacts, Strathmore has been scrambling to replace that revenue before the next quarterly report. Your promotion to partner comes with expectations to deliver significant new business. I paused. Like, for instance, acquiring a successful tech company with minimal investment. Richard stood abruptly. This is absurd. We came here to help you, not to be ambushed with corporate espionage and unfounded accusations. Marcus, our legal counsel, spoke for the first time. Nothing unfounded about public corporate filings, Mr. Baker. Strathmore's last quarterly report showed a 17% decline in revenue from key accounts. Your announcement last night about TechBridge's supposed financial distress could constitute defamation and market manipulation, both actionable offenses. One of the attorneys whispered urgently to Richard, who waved him off. This isn't about Strathmore's business, Richard insisted. This is about helping family. Dad and I are concerned about your ability to manage growth at the scale. I laughed, a genuine, incredulous laugh. Richard, let's be honest. This isn't about concern for me. This is about saving your own career. Dad looked between us, his certainty visibly wavering. Richard, what's going on here? You told me Allison's company was struggling. It's more complicated than these surface metrics suggest, Richard said dismissively. Technology ventures are inherently unstable. The infrastructure and client base may look impressive now, but without proper corporate governance. Our governance structure includes a board with the former CTO of Microsoft and the ex-CFO of Oracle. I interrupted. Our audited financials show 31 consecutive months of profitability. Our client satisfaction scores average 4.8 out of 5. I leaned forward. So I'll ask directly. What exactly do you bring to the table that we don't already have? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Richard looked to Dad for support. But Dad was staring at the presentation slides still visible on the screen, showing TechBridge's impressive growth trajectory. I think, Dad said slowly, there may have been a misunderstanding about the nature of Allison's business. Richard's face hardened. There's no misunderstanding. This is exactly what I warned you about. She's gotten lucky with a few good quarters, but without proper guidance. 6 years is not luck, Richard, I cut in. 217 employees is not luck. $99 million in valuation is not luck. Diana slid a document across the table. This is a non-disclosure agreement. If you'd like to continue this discussion, all parties will need to sign it first. Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll have to conclude this meeting. Richard stared at the document, then at me. The facade finally cracked. Fine, he snapped. You want the truth? Strathmore is restructuring. My division is under review. I need a significant win to secure my position. Dad's head jerked up in surprise. What? The market's changing. Dad, Richard continued, frustration evident in his voice. Traditional consulting is being disrupted by specialized firms like, he gestured vaguely toward me, like this. I thought if I could bring in TechBridge as an acquisition, position it as my initiative, I could stabilize my standing. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad looked genuinely shocked. The attorneys exchanged uncomfortable glances. So there is no legitimate offer, I stated, more confirmation than question. No transition plan. Just a desperate attempt to use my company to save your career. Richard's expression turned ugly. At least I have a real career. Not some glorified hobby that you stumbled into after dropping out of college. Richard. Dad's sharp rebuke surprised everyone in the room. He was staring at the screen showing TechBridge's client list, a who's who of global corporations. This is not what you described. I stood up. I think we're done here. Marcus will see you out. Richard wasn't ready to concede. You can't just dismiss us. Dad, tell her. Dad held up his hand, silencing Richard as he continued to study the presentation. Allison, you've built all this? From scratch. Yes, I said simply. The company you called my little project employs over 200 people, serves clients in 27 countries, and is currently valued at $99 million. For the first time in my adult life, I saw something new in my father's eyes as he looked at me, respect, tinged with confusion and the dawning realization that he had fundamentally misunderstood what I had accomplished. I had no idea, he admitted quietly. You never asked, I replied. Richard gathered his papers, his movements jerky with suppressed anger. This isn't over. Strathmore has resources you can't imagine. Marcus stood. That sounded remarkably like a threat, Mr. Baker. Would you care to clarify for the record? The attorneys were already backing toward the door, sensing the meeting had gone catastrophically off script. Richard, one of them murmured. We should regroup before pursuing this further. I walked to the conference room door and held it open. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. We'll have security escort you out. As they filed past me, Dad paused. Allison, I'd like to stay. To talk. If that's all right. I considered him for a moment. This man who had dismissed my work for years. Who had celebrated Richard's every achievement while ignoring mine. Who had come here today expecting to help his son take over my company. Not today, Dad, I said finally. I have a business to run. As the door closed behind them, Diana came to stand beside me. You okay? I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. Actually, yes. For the first time in a very long time, I think I am. Through the glass walls of our conference room, I watched my father and brother being escorted through the open office area where our team worked. I saw them taking in the vibrant, professional environment, the standing desks, the collaborative spaces, the walls displaying our patents and awards. I saw the dawning comprehension on my father's face as he finally saw, truly saw, what I had built. And I knew that whether or not they ever fully understood or acknowledged it, I no longer needed them to. The validation I had sought for so long had been right here all along, in the company I had created and the people who had believed in my vision. As Richard and my father disappeared into the elevator, I turned back to my executive team, these brilliant people who had joined me on this journey not because of my family name or credentials, but because they believed in what we were building together. So, I said, feeling genuinely unburdened for the first time in years, shall we get back to work? The days following the confrontation passed in a blur of activity. News of our rejected acquisition offers had somehow leaked to the tech press, sparking renewed interest in TechBridge. 3 major venture capital firms reached out within 48 hours, eager to discuss potential investment. After careful consideration with our board, we accepted a $150 million funding round led by Horizon Ventures, valuing the company at $220 million. The press release went out on a Wednesday morning, and by afternoon, my phone was flooded with congratulatory messages from industry colleagues and former doubters alike. TechBridge secures $150 million investment. Founder Allison proves dropouts can win big, read the headline in Tech Insider. The article highlighted our growth trajectory and innovative approach to enterprise security, positioning us as a disruptor in a traditionally stagnant industry. I gathered our team in the main area of our headquarters that Friday afternoon. Standing on an improvised platform, actually just a sturdy coffee table, I raised a glass of champagne. To everyone who believed in this company when it was just an idea on a whiteboard, I said, looking around at the faces of people who had taken a chance on a college dropout with a vision. This isn't my success, it's ours. Every late night, every impossible deadline, every moment when we chose innovation over convention has led us here. Diana stood beside me, adding her own toast. And to our fearless leader, who taught us all that the traditional path isn't the only path to extraordinary outcomes. The celebration continued well into the evening, with impromptu speeches and stories from early employees. Marcus reminded everyone about our first office above the coffee shop, where the espresso machine downstairs would shake our floors every hour. Layla recounted the time we lost power during a major client presentation and delivered the entire pitch by the light of laptop screens and phone flashlights. These were my people, not because of shared bloodlines or family expectations, but because of shared vision and mutual respect. The following Monday, my mother called. We hadn't spoken since Richard's promotion party. I saw the news, she said softly. Congratulations, Allison. It's extraordinary what you've accomplished. Thank you, Mom, I replied, surprised by how much her acknowledgement still meant to me. Your father is struggling with all this, she continued. He doesn't understand how he could have been so wrong about your business. I chose my words carefully. It's not just about the business, Mom. It's about years of dismissing what mattered to me because it didn't fit his definition of success. I know, she admitted, her voice heavy with regret. I should have said something sooner. Should have insisted he see what you were building. And what about you? I asked. Did you see it? The pause before she answered told me everything. Not fully, she finally said. I knew you were doing well, but I didn't understand the scale. I let your father's perspective influence mine too much. Her honesty was refreshing. We talked for nearly an hour, the longest, most authentic conversation we'd had in years. She asked detailed questions about the company, genuinely curious about what I'd built. I found myself explaining our technology and business model with the same passion I used when pitching to investors. I'd like to see it someday, she said as our call wound down. Your office. Your team. If that would be all right. I'd like that, I replied, surprised to find I meant it. 2 weeks later, she visited TechBridge headquarters alone. I gave her the full tour, introducing her to team members and showing her our latest projects. Her background in art history gave her a unique perspective on our user interface design, and she offered surprisingly insightful feedback on our website aesthetics. You've created something remarkable here, she said as we sat in my office afterward. Not just the business, but this community of people. They all speak about the work with such enthusiasm. That's been the most rewarding part, I admitted. Building a place where people feel valued for their contributions, not just their credentials. She caught the subtext immediately. Your father and I made mistakes, Allison. Big ones. We measured success by such narrow standards. Dad's standards, I corrected gently. Yes, she acknowledged, but I accepted them too. I let his voice become the family voice. Her visit marked the beginning of a careful reconciliation, not an instant repair of years of damage, but a thoughtful rebuilding of our relationship on new, more equal terms. Richard was another matter entirely. The fallout from his failed takeover attempt had consequences beyond our family drama. Word of Strathmore's questionable tactics reached their board of directors, prompting an internal review of Richard's division. 3 weeks after our confrontation, He was quietly demoted from partner to senior consultant. I learned about it from industry contacts rather than family. Dad eventually confirmed it during an awkward phone call. His voice strained as he explained that Richard was reassessing his career options. He made some poor decisions, Dad acknowledged. The closest he would come to admitting Richard's attempted hostile takeover was wrong. I didn't press the issue. Richard's career problems were his to solve, just as my company had been mine to build. 6 months after the confrontation, Dad reached out, asking to meet for lunch. I suggested a casual cafe near our office. Neutral territory for what promised to be an uncomfortable conversation. He arrived early, already seated when I walked in. He stood as I approached, an awkward half-hug serving as greeting. "You look well," he said, and I could tell he was trying. "The investment round must be keeping you busy." "It is," I agreed. "We're expanding our European operations and developing a new platform for healthcare security compliance." He nodded, clearly out of his depth, but making an effort to engage. "Your mother showed me the articles about your company. Very impressive." "Thank you." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us until he finally spoke the words I sensed he had rehearsed. "I was wrong, Allison. About your company. About your path." He looked down at his coffee cup. "I measured success by the standards that worked for me, without considering that excellence could look different for you." It wasn't a complete apology, but from my father, it was monumental. "I appreciate that, Dad. Richard is struggling," he continued. The demotion hit him hard. "He's considering leaving Strathmore altogether." I nodded but offered no solution. This wasn't my problem to fix. Dad seemed to understand. "I'm not asking you to help him. That wouldn't be appropriate. I've been thinking about how differently I responded to setbacks for each of you. When you struggled in school, I saw it as a character flaw. When Richard's career faltered, I saw it as a temporary obstacle. The difference is perspective," I said. "And choice. I chose to leave college because I saw a better path for myself. You saw it as failure because it didn't match your definition of success." He considered this. "I've been thinking about what success really means. Beyond titles and degrees. The company you've built, the team that respects you, the problems you're solving. That's real success, isn't it?" "It is for me," I replied simply. We didn't resolve everything in that lunch, or in the conversations that followed over the subsequent months. Family dynamics built over decades don't transform overnight. But we established a new foundation, one based on mutual respect rather than authority and expectation. At TechBridge, I worked to create a company culture that valued diverse forms of intelligence and achievement. We established a mentorship program specifically for entrepreneurs from non-traditional backgrounds, and I began speaking at conferences about alternative paths to success in tech. The dropout narrative is often oversimplified, I told a crowd of aspiring entrepreneurs at a major tech conference. The key isn't dropping out, it's recognizing when the established path isn't serving your specific goals and having the courage to create your own. 1 year after the confrontation at our office, TechBridge Solutions was valued at over $300 million. We had grown to nearly 400 employees across 5 global offices. My role had evolved from hands-on founder to strategic visionary, guiding the company's expansion while empowering our leadership team. Richard eventually left Strathmore, starting his own boutique consulting practice focused on sectors he genuinely understood. Our relationship remained distant but civil. The competitive dynamic gradually replaced by mutual professional respect. The journey from useless dropout to industry leader taught me that true success isn't measured by others' recognition, but by the impact of your work and the integrity with which you build it. The validation I had sought from my family ultimately came not from their approval, but from freeing myself from the need for it. As I look to the future, I'm excited about TechBridge's continued growth and the new challenges ahead. But more than that, I'm grateful for the personal growth this journey has inspired, the confidence to define success on my own terms, the wisdom to value substance over appearances, and the freedom to build something meaningful without seeking permission or approval. So, what about you? Have you ever had your achievements dismissed by those who should have supported you? How did you respond? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found value in my journey from underestimated dropout to tech CEO, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about defying expectations and creating success on your own terms. Remember, the most powerful validation comes not from outside approval, but from the courage to believe in your own vision. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep building your own definition of success.